Certainly an interesting turn of events. We have our ANN7 reporter Natasha Piri who joins our conversation. Natasha, what is exactly happening on the ground at University of Johannesburg right now?
Well, a very good afternoon to you and to the viewers at home. You could understand it's quite noisy behind me, but we just come out of a lecture. Minister Pravin Gordhan and his former deputy Pravin Jonas have actually given a lecture, talks about radical economic transformation, white monopoly capital and state capture, also asking what state capture is, how state-owned enterprises are actually captured and various issues of this. And of course this falls at the backdrop of the ANC National Policy Conference and the SACP Congress, where there was a bit of a ruckus over the characterization of white monopoly capital, and we know that the concept of white monopoly capital rejected by the majority at the ANC National Policy Conference. But I'm actually joined by quite young lads who raised somewhat interesting and pertinent questions throughout the Q&A session, and they'll actually introduce themselves to you. And actually, guys, just give us the whole gist. I mean, how was the talk inside? Do you agree with some of the ideologies that came out of there? Some saying white monopoly capital isn't somewhat real, issues like that.
Well, of course, we cannot trust the discussions of former Minister Pravin and his deputy, Pravin Jonas. And this is precisely because they are arguing from a defeated position. You must know that they wanted to be part of the gravy train. Now they were left out, and they didn't approve of radical economic transformation that President Zuma is speaking about. They don't approve of free quality education. They don't approve of anything that speaks about redistributing the economy to the people. So Pravin has, we know actually as a fact that Pravin is captured by white monopoly capital. That's why he doesn't say anything about white monopoly capital. In 2015, in December, when he was reappointed, when President Jacob Zuma was forced to reappoint him, it was the markets, it was white monopoly capital that forced President Zuma to appoint him. So of course he cannot bite the hand that feeds him. And also this claim of Mcebisi that he refused 600 million is just a ploy they're lying, these guys. So and they don't want to tell us about the gist of what's happening in the South African economy. They don't want to tell us who owns what and who is the real enemy. And they are Dalai Laming on this issue of white monopoly capital and state capture. And they don't want to tell the truth that a capitalist state inherently is a captured state, and that capital in South Africa expresses itself as white. It has a white face, capital in South Africa. And another thing is that he speaks about we must protect our country, save our country. South Africa is a conquered and captured state since 1652. So we don't know what we must save. Actually, we are not part of either the Zuptas or Pravin Gordhan and his Save South Africa campaign. We are from the people. We are for the people of South Africa, as the Economic Freedom Fighters Student Command. We are for the people, and we are saying that this thing that always we are told about investors and what we are never told about the people should end. And we can't expect guys like Pravin to take us forward, because already their bread is buttered on where they eat. So of course they are captured. That is my contribution.
Let me bring Teppo into the conversation. You were somewhat rejecting Pravin Gordhan's speech, and as your friend says that he actually defends white monopoly capital. Are you of the same views?
Look, I think this was a public conversation that was hosted at an institution of higher learning. So as an institution of higher learning, one of the things that we do much as students, we that come and listen so as to give perspectives. I thought that the topic would, it seemed a bit interesting, but I was even critical of the people that came to present it, because it was only coming from a dominant narrative, which is to say that, look, the problem of South Africa, or the primary rather contradiction that characterizes South Africa today is the effect of corruption, state capture, and all of those things. And of course, I posed the question to say that if this is the case, state as we know it, in the Leninist attack, that it is an organ of irreconcilable class antagonisms, who has then captured the state? Because it can't be that these comrades come here and tell us that they've been to exile, they went all the way and come and define to us that the enemy is colorless, or monopoly capital has no structure or color or anything of that sort. This is what my just argument was, to say, look, the South African economy as it is, we know who controls it. And they must be able to tell us, and they must clearly and explicitly state that who owns the land, who owns the mines, who owns the banks, and who is actually robbing millions of South Africans that would actually go into funding, social spending like healthcare, education, and all these other things. And also we asked a question to say that as a Ministry of Finance, why could they not at least postulate a position on free education? What should be? But we know Pravin's politics. Pravin is not ideologically orientated to any strand. His views are views that are sponsored from elsewhere. Not to say that the phenomenon of Gupta and state capture does not exist. We know the ANC is corrupt. The Gupta phenomenon is happening. It is robbing millions of South Africans of money. But what we were disagreeing with, we were saying that it can't be that 23 years down the line, when we ask who is the enemy of the revolution, I even asked in his terms that when he was youth, still active in the ANC structures, spoke of the NDR. What does the NDR characterize as the enemy of the struggle? And he was pity-patting and titty-batting. This is something that I have a problem with. We told them in South African politics that there seems to be a lack of very, very, poor discourse in how we conceptualize issues that affect not only the country but also the African continent. And so we came here to listen as students of the EFF to also say, look, it can't be, Pravin, that you come here in our university. Firstly, the lecture was supposed to be opened by our Vice Chancellor, Mr. Aaron Rensbeck. He didn't come, he didn't pitch. So you could have, it's nothing, but it was a watershed sort of Ramaphosa pro campaign and whatsoever. And then we don't enter in the politics of the ANC. We reject the ANC. We reject, even the Guptas in themselves. And if anything, today's a lecture by both Mcebisi and Pravin was nothing but a sort of like camouflaging of who the real enemy is. And of course, I agree that part and parcel of our problems in South Africa is rampant corruption, which is articulated in the 7th cardinal pillar of the EFF to say that one of the goals in the future is to move to a state which is going to abolish tenders and create a corruption-free state and whatsoever. So corruption is an endemic problem, but we don't believe that the primary contradiction of how corruption then arises. We know that money is being looted. The state, we know, we agree fully and we're against that. But it can't be that Pravin and Mcebisi come to students in an institution of higher learning and come to us and tell us that the issue of growth is an issue of which needs hard work. Black people have been working hard for the last 23 years in South Africa, but nothing has changed. And he told us about policies are not there. And the policies that they both stand for as the ANC faction, as the white monopoly capitalist faction within the ANC, and the other one, which is yours, ANC7, the Gupta one, which is corrupt, also stand for a certain, I don't know, they are saying time is over, it's fine.
We have to bring in just the last speaker into the frame. There were talks about restructuring of the economy inside there, but your counterparts also saying that they believe that the economy is actually run by, white people, dominated rather by white people. Are you of the same view?
Pravin Gordhan is a fake, he's a facade, and we reject Pravin Gordhan. We also reject his view of a colorless monopoly capital. Because when you deny the question of white monopoly capital, what you are doing is that you are denying the colonial history and the legacy that is left in the country. So obviously, white monopoly capital is real and it has a face, and capitalism in this country has a face and it's white. Obviously, this is the same person, Pravin Gordhan, who failed to give free education to students. And in fact, Trevor Manuel, Pravin Gordhan, and even this lumpen they call Molisiki Gaba represent nothing but continuity. Continuity in the very same neoliberal policies that have instilled since 1994 up to the present age. And on top of that, the ANC and all of its factions, even from the pro-capitalist faction towards the pseudo-leftist faction, represent the same agenda, which is to suit white people at the expense of black people.
Thank you so much. Well, Nomfunda, I actually don't want to add or subtract from what they have said. You've heard what the students had to say. Some of them, the EFF command rather, just rejecting, that lecture given out by Pravin Gordhan and Babin Mcebisi join us. As from us here at UJ, it's back to you in studio.